few months ago, I was sitting in the airport awaiting my plane, and they overheard two older people, a couple, talking in Hebrew. So I figured they must be Jewish. And even though I was in some crazy airport, in Eckveld, in a non-Jewish area, I approached them and said, "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" And they said yes. So I pulled out my tefillin, and I told the man, "Would you like to put on tefillin today?" He said, No, I'm not religious. But the wife says, "But we're kosher, we eat kosher all the time." I said, "If you eat kosher, that's your mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of the wife to provide the kosher. And the mitzvah of the husband is to put on the tefillin. So we should get him to put on tefillin." "Nah, it's okay, I eat kosher, it's enough." I said, if he puts on tefillin, this could be the final mitzvah that could bring about the coming of Mashiach. For the Rambam says that we should always view the world on a scale of 50 good deeds and 50 bad deeds. So this one mitzvah of putting on tefillin could tip the scale to salvation, and you could bring Mashiach right now. The wife thinks about it for a moment and says, "Oy vey, Mashiach, God forbid, chas v'sholem." I say, what do you mean, chas v'sholem? When Mashiach comes, it's going to be the end of the world, there's going to be destruction, and we don't want Mashiach to come. I said, "Lady, you have it all wrong. That's not the Jewish view of Mashiach. On the contrary, the Jewish view of Mashiach means a world of peace and harmony." She said, "If that's the case, let my husband put on tefillin." And we pulled out the tefillin, and he put on the tefillin and said the Shema. From this story, one can understand that the concept of Mashiach is still very far from many people's understanding. And so tonight I want to discuss basic concepts of Mashiach. I'd like to begin with 5 questions on the topic of Mashiach, and throughout the class to answer these 5 questions.
Can I stick in a 6?
So we're going to start with the first question. Why is the name of Mashiach not mentioned in the 5 books of Moses? Number 2, why is belief in Mashiach not one of the 613 commandments? So if Mashiach is so important, why then is it not like putting on tefillin every day? It should be a mitzvah of the 613 commandments of the Torah. Number 3, when is Mashiach first referenced or mentioned in the Torah? Number 4, why must we await anxiously his coming? Isn't doing mitzvos enough? In other words, if I'm a good Jew, I'm a religious Jew, I study Torah, I do all the mitzvos, why must I also await the coming of the Mashiach? And 5, what should we do now to hasten his arrival? And so to answer these questions, I'd like to begin with the Rambam. The Rambam, Moses Maimonides, in chapter 11 of the laws of Malachim, says like this: HaMelech HaMashiach osid lamoid ulahachzer malchus yovid liyashna. It says in the future, the Messianic king will arise and renew the Davidic dynasty, restoring it to its initial sovereignty. And then it goes on to say, Uvoina HaMikdash Mekabetz Nidchei Yisrael. And then he will build the holy temple and gather the dispersed of Israel. And then it goes on to say, V'choizrin kol ha'mishpatim b'yamav kishahayu mikoidim. And then he's going to restore all the mitzvahs, all the commandments as it was in the previous state, in yesteryear. In other words, even though there are 613 commandments of the Torah, today we only fulfill maybe 1/3 of the whole Torah. 207 commandments of the 613 can we fulfill today in exile. So when Mashiach will come, he will restore all the mitzvos of old. And then the Rambam makes a very, very strong statement. He says like this. V'chol mi she'enei ma'amin boi, mi she'enei mechake leviyasai, lo v'shar nevi'im b'lvad hu chofer, ela b'torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Anyone who does not believe in him, or does not await anxiously his coming, denies not only the statements of the other prophets, but those of the Torah and Moses, our teacher. Then the Rambam goes on to say that the Torah testified to his coming. Where do we find in the Torah the coming of Mashiach? So the Rambam says in Deuteronomy 30, Pasuk 3 to 5, it states, V'shav Hashem elikecha yeshavuscha v'richamecha, v'shav v'kibetzcha v'goymer. The Rambam says, God will bring back your captivity and have mercy upon you. He will again gather you from among the nations. So here we see that there will be a time, according to the Torah, that the Jews will be dispersed. And now God will gather us back from the diaspora and bring us back from our captivity. And then the Rambam brings a second proof, and he says that Af b'parshas Bilam Nema, also in the portion of Bilam it states, and he brings the following pasuk: Darach kochav miyakov v'kom shevet b'Yisrael. The Rambam says that the prophet Bilam, who was a non-Jewish prophet, also prophesied about the redemption. And he said that, says the Rambam, that there are two Mashiachs that Bilam referred to. The first Mashiach and the final Mashiach. The first Mashiach, he says, that's David. King David was considered to be the first Messiah. And he brings the pasuk, Ashurenu v'leikarev. He says that I perceive it, or I see it, but not now. This is David. I perceive it, but not in the near future. This is the Mashiach. And then he goes on to say, a star shall go forth from Jacob. This is David. A staff shall arise in Israel. This refers to the Mashiach. So here the Rambam brings two proofs, one from Deuteronomy and the other from Numbers, that allude to the fact that Torah does speak about a Mashiach. And then he brings a third proof as well. So from here we see, number one, that a few of the questions we asked are answered. The first question is, why is the name of Mashiach not mentioned in the 5 books of Moses? The answer is, Mashiach is mentioned in the Torah, and we just brought the two proofs. But the question still remains, why don't we find the word Mashiach in the Torah? Also the question of why must we await his coming anxiously, even though I'm already doing the Torah and the mitzvos? Because even if you are very religious and you're doing the Torah to the best of your ability, you can only fulfill perhaps 1/3 of the Torah. To be able to fulfill the entire Torah, Mashiach has to come and restore the Beis HaMikdash. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher, when God told him he cannot enter into the land of Israel, he began to pray 515 prayers, Hastening El Hashem, that God should allow him to enter into the land of Israel. Now, Moshe was not simply interested in a tour of the land of Israel. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to enter into the land of Israel because he knew that only by entering into the land of Israel can he fulfill all the mitzvos of the Torah. Moses, who was a lover of God and a lover of the Torah, wanted to be able to do all the Torah. And therefore today, if a Jew truly loves God and truly wants to fulfill God's Torah, the only way we can do that is if Mashiach comes. And therefore, I have to await anxiously his coming every day so that he will rebuild the temple and return the Torah as it was in its great origin and beginning. Why is Mashiach, the word Mashiach, not mentioned in the Torah? interesting that the word Mashiach is really like a conglomerate. In other words, it's not only about a person, but rather it's about an era. Similar to the word kosher. Do you know that the word kosher is not mentioned in the Torah? We have the laws of kosher. In other words, the Torah says you shall eat such animals and you shall not eat other animals. These animals are pure, these animals are impure. But the word kosher is not mentioned in the Torah because kosher represents the entire transition and all the preparations from the slaughtering of the animal to the salting of the animal up until the fact you eat the animal. So therefore, kosher is a conglomerate of all the laws of animals that are permissible and animals that are not permissible. And similarly, Mashiach is not only the name of the person, because we don't really know his name. There are different names that Mashiach could be called by. Mashiach represents the era of this redemption that God will bring to the Jewish people. The word Mashiach literally means the anointed one. And as the Rambam said, King David was also anointed and he was also called the Mashiach. But a Hasidic insight tells us that the reason why he's called the Mashiach is because this Mashiach will reveal the oil of Torah, which represents oil that floats on top of water, alluding to the deepest secrets of the Torah. Today we already have a taste of this. The studies of Hasidus are called the shemen, the oil of the Torah. So, even though the name Mashiach is not specifically mentioned in the Torah, the concept of Mashiach and redemption is very vivid in the Torah. So now we have another question. If Mashiach is so important, and it is referred to in the Torah, as the Rambam said, why is belief in Mashiach not a mitzvah? It should be a mitzvah. If it's so important, why is it not a mitzvah? Yes, it's true that Rambam says that the belief in the coming of Mashiach is one of the 13 principles of the Torah. It's the principle of faith. And as he says here clearly in the Rambam, that one who does not await his coming, he is called a kofer. He denies not only the books of the prophets, but he also denies the actual scripture of Moshe itself. But yet, why don't we find belief of Mashiach to be a mitzvah? I'd like to share 3 answers with you. Number 1 is the mitzvah or the answer of the Smak. Rabbi Yitzchak of Korbel, a 13th century halachic scholar. And he says like this, he has a book where he enumerates mitzvos. And the first mitzvah, he says that the commandment of Anochi Hashem Elikecha, I am God your Lord that took you out of the land of Egypt. This is not only a commandment to believe in God, it's not only a commandment to believe that God took us out of Egypt, but rather just like God took us out of Egypt the first time, he took us out of exile the first time, so too he will take us out of this exile, this Egypt as well. So the Smak connects the belief in the coming of Mashiach with a mitzvah in the Torah. And he says this, by the way, is the proof for the Gemara. For the Gemara says when a person dies and he goes to heaven, one of the first questions that he is asked is, have you awaited the redemption? Sepisa l'Yeshua. Have you awaited the redemption? What did you do to bring Mashiach? So the Smak asks, how do we know this? How do we know there's a mitzvah to actually await the coming of Mashiach? And he says it's based on the first of the 10 commandments of Anochi Hashem Elikecha, I am God your Lord that took you out of the land of Egypt. That's the first answer. Another answer. How does belief in Mashiach become a mitzvah? The Rebbe once said that we have a mitzvah in the Torah which is called tefillah. Tefillah means prayer. The Rambam says that if a Jew is in need, if a Jew is suffering, if a Jew is lacking something, if there's a void in your life, then you have the obligation to pray to God to help you. That is the mitzvah of tefillah. And therefore, said the Rebbe, if a Jew feels the lack of Mashiach in his life, and he awaits Mashiach every day, and he wants Mashiach to come, and he prays to God in his tefillah, God, bring Mashiach now, now Mashiach becomes a mitzvah. Because he's praying for the Mashiach. And then the Rebbe gives another answer. He says, how come Mashiach is not one of the 613 mitzvos enumerated by the Rambam? And the Rebbe says like this. There's another mitzvah which is called the mitzvah of teshuvah. Tshuva means repentance or returning. If you make a mistake, or you neglected to do a mitzvah, or you violated a mitzvah, God says you have an opportunity to do tshuva. Yet, even though tshuva is a mitzvah, it is not enumerated as one of the 613 mitzvahs in the Rambam. And the question is why? Why does the Rambam not enumerate teshuvah, repentance, as a mitzvah? And the Rebbe explains that the Rambam himself, in the introduction to the mitzvos, says that any mitzvah which is a general mitzvah, I do not enumerate as a mitzvah. Only particular mitzvahs. Tshuva is a general mitzvah. Why? Because any time I make a sin, Chas v'shalom, God forbid you break the Shabbos, or you ate non-kosher, or you forgot to put on tefillin. Any time you do a sin, then you have to do tshuva. So tshuva is not only one mitzvah, but tshuva is connected with all the other mitzvahs of the Torah. It's a general mitzvah. The Rambam does not enumerate general mitzvahs. What is Mashiach? Mashiach is a general mitzvah. Mashiach is the purpose of creation. Why did God create the world? So the world will be in a state of peace and harmony. So the world will be in a state of perfection. There'll be no wars, no hunger, no strife, no jealousy. Money will be found like the dust of the earth. Everybody's going to be rich when Mashiach comes. All you're going to have to do is study Torah. Contemplate the cosmos. Contemplate the greatness of God's creations. Contemplate the infinity of God. So therefore, how do we bring about Mashiach? Every time we do a mitzvah, we're building another brick of this home, of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Holy Temple. And every time we do another mitzvah, we're bringing God one step closer into the world. And every time we do another mitzvah, we're bringing Mashiach one step closer to redemption. So really, Mashiach is not only a specific mitzvah, a particular mitzvah, but Mashiach is the purpose of all the mitzvahs. Because we're doing the mitzvahs to bring about Mashiach. So therefore, Mashiach cannot be counted as a mitzvah. Because it is beyond all the mitzvahs. It's the purpose of all the mitzvahs. Every mitzvah is done to bring about the coming of Mashiach. And this explains a very interesting verse. Because the Rambam mentioned two proofs for Mashiach from the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy. And he also brings a third proof. But in truth, if Mashiach is so important, we have to say that the proof of Mashiach is found in the very first verse of the Torah as well. And in the very first chapter. So let's start with the first chapter, and then we'll go up to the first verse. We are told, in the beginning God created heaven and earth. But before God created heaven and earth, V'ruach Halikim mirachefes al panei hamoyim. The Spirit of God hovered over the waters. What was the Spirit of God? Tells us the Medrash that the Spirit of God represents the Ruchoi Shel Mashiach, the Spirit of Mashiach. And the question is, what is the Spirit of Mashiach doing hovering over the waters even before God created the world? And the answer could be explained as follows. When a person goes to an architect to build a home, the architect asks the person, what kind of a home do you want? Do you want a home with 2 floors or 3 floors? Do you want a home with 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms? Do you want a tennis court? Do you want a swimming pool? What else do you want part of the home? Once you know what you want, and you have a goal and a vision, then you can relay this goal and vision to the architect, and then the architect can make the plans, and then you can hire a contractor, and then you can build a home. The same is true with creation. Yes, God needed the so-called contractors to build the world. He also needed the blueprint, which was the Torah, to build the world. But before the contractors and before the blueprint, you know what you need? You need a goal. You need a vision. You need a purpose. So God says the purpose of creation, the goal of creation, the vision of creation is V'ruach Elikim Ha'chefetz Al Pnei Hamayim, is the Spirit of Mashiach. The whole purpose of creation is a perfect world. The whole purpose of creation is a world where man and God are intimately connected one with the other. And therefore, even before God created the world, the Spirit of the Mashiach hovered over the waters. We can even go a step further to the very first word of the Torah. The very first word of the Torah is what? Bereshis. Bereshis, our rabbis tell us, stand for 2 words. Bara Shis. God created 6 things. 6 things. God created before He created the world, as Hashemayim as Haaretz, before He created the heaven and the earth. And one of these 6 things is Shemoi Shel Mashiach, is the name of Mashiach. The name of the Messiah was created even before God created the world. What is the name of the Mashiach? Says the Bereshis Rabbah, Yinon Shemoi. His name is Yinon. What's the proof? The proof is from the book of Tehillim, book of Psalms, chapter Ayin Beis, chapter 72. It says over there, before the sun ever shone, already his name was Yinon. In other words, before God created the sun, and on the first day God created everything, according to Rashi. Throughout the other days He put it up in its proper place, but in one moment there was ex nihilo, there was a big bang, there was nothing, and all of a sudden out of the black hole the entire world was created. So before God created the sun, already Yinon Shemoi, his name was Yinon. What does Yinon mean? Why is it called Yinon? Says the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer, because to teach us that in the future the Mashiach will awake those who lie in the dust. So Yinon means to wake up those people who are sleeping. He will wake up the dead. He will wake up those who are in a slumber of spirituality and bring them back to God. That will be the job of Mashiach Yinon, to wake up all those who are spiritually dead as well, and to cause them to do tshuva. So that's why it's called Yinon. And this name of Mashiach was already in God's mind before creation. Similarly, we find in the book Rizil HaMalach, he says in the word Bereshis, we find the word bayis, home. Roish bayis. In other words, what was the purpose of creation? God desired to have a dwelling place down here in this world. God desired to have a dwelling place down here in this world. He wanted a bayis, he wanted a home where he could dwell together with the people of Israel. What is bayis? What does a home mean? It says Rizil HaMalach. There are 3 letters to the word bayis, to the word home. There's a beis, there's a yud, and a taf. The beis has 3 walls. The 3 walls represent the 3 sides of the world. We know that beneath the frozen mass of the North Pole, there is nothing. There is no earth. The world only has landmass on 3 sides. The north is opened. It says, "Mitzafa in tipasa chara'a." From the north comes forth all the evil. So therefore, when the world was created, God only created the world with 3 sides. And he allowed for evil to reign. And the job of Mashiach is to close off that 4th side, to bring closure to the world, to bring protection to the world. So the first thing of bayis represents creation. That's the beis. And then you have the yud. Yud represents, with 10 utterances, God created the world. Or it alludes to the 10 commandments. And then you have bayis, the taf of bayis. The final letter, which is the letter taf, says the Zil HaMalach. This alludes to Techiyas HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. And so therefore we can say perhaps there are 3 stages in creation. As the Talmud says, there are 2,000 years of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, and 2,000 years of Mashiach. So the beis, creation, the open wall represents chaos. Then we have 2,000 years when God gave the 10 commandments, which is Torah. And then the last 2,000 years represents the 2,000 years of Mashiach, when Mashiach prepares the world for perfection until to bring about the resurrection of the dead. In short, the beis, which is the first letter of creation, represents this concept, because beis equals number 2. In other words, the Bible starts from the second part of creation. But the first part of creation, which preceded the Bible, that is Mashiach. So, in summation, the whole purpose of creation was to have a perfect world. And it's up to each and every one of us to make that happen. So how do we do this? Number 1, through prayer. When we pray to God and we ask God to bring Mashiach, God will listen to our prayer. And therefore, says the Rebbe, when we say the words "V'sachazena ineinu b'shuvcha l'tzion b'rachamim," that our eyes should see the Shekhinah, the divine presence, return to Jerusalem, we should actually visualize with our eyes the 3rd Holy Temple. And by visualizing with our eyes the 3rd Holy Temple, it's going to make it more real. And we're going to have a greater yearning and a greater desire for this. Number 2, to increase in charity. It says, Tzedakah mekareves al-geula, charity brings and hastens the redemption. And therefore each person should have in their kitchen, in their home, a pushka on the wall with a nail, so the pushka, the charity box, and the wall become one. And every day to put a few coins into that charity box. And that will bring and hasten the redemption. And thirdly, to learn and study Torah in general, and specifically learn and study concepts of Mashiach. And therefore, those that were not here tonight, I would like to suggest that those that were here tonight should tell over something they heard about Mashiach to their friends that were not here tonight, or to send the video of this class to a friend that was not here tonight. And by doing so, who will promote the teachings of Torah and the teachings of Mashiach, and this will no doubt hasten the ultimate Geula. And to close with a story that is told that the Kotzker Rebbe once said that when the Mashiach will come, there will be a big line of all the Jews throughout the entire world that are going to await to shake hands with the Mashiach. And the Kotzker said, so where do you think I'm going to stand on this line? And the Chassidim said to the Rebbe, you, Heilige Kotzker, you're going to be the first. You're going to greet the Messiah himself. He says, no, I'm not going to be the first. I'm going to be the last. You're going to be the last? Why are you going to be the last? He says, very simple. Mashiach is going to come. He'll go from one country to the other country. He'll be shaking all the presidents and all the ambassadors and all the mayors and all the citizens' hands. And he'll go through the whole globe. And finally, he'll come to the end of the globe. He's going to come to me. And he's going to look at me. I'm going to look at him. And he's going to tell me, Heilige Kotzker, Holy Kotzker Rebbe, where were you all this time? At that moment, I will turn to the Mashiach and I will say, Mashiach, where were you all this time?